So welcome everyone to the 2020 55K Commencement and Virtual Summit. And thank you for joining us. With expert help from our nationally experienced facilitators of virtual events, you've got to meet Adair a little bit already, we've put together a fast-paced interactive agenda for you. The next 2.5 hours are an opportunity for a couple of things. For us to reflect as we sunset the 55,000 Degrees Initiative. Also to learn about some great collaborations underway that position us for continued progress in education. And we'll hear from a national commentator on race and education, Dr. Andre Perry, who's with the Brookings Institution. And you'll get a chance to interact with each other as we look forward. Ben Reno Weber, serial entrepreneur, executive director of the Greater Louisville Project, and head honcho at Microsoft's Future of Work initiative, will be our MC, keeping us moving and entertained. I'm Mary Gwen Wheeler, Executive Director of 55,000 Degrees. 55K is our goal, but it's also a partnership, a movement to dramatically increase education levels in our hometown. Think with me, think back 10 years to 2010. We were just beginning to climb out of a deep recession. It was clear that the majority of the jobs, many in manufacturing, were not coming back, and that the new jobs required more knowledge and skill, and that to compete for those jobs, we had to grow our talent base. Mayor Abramson gathered education, business, and civic leaders together to stop pointing fingers and work across the silos. We signed the Greater Louisville Education Commitment, setting a 10-year goal to add 55,000 degrees and move into the top tier of our peer cities in education attainment. For fast forward now, then 10 years, we've increased the attainment rate by 8 percentage points, with 46% of our working age population with an associate degree or higher. Not our 50% goal, but now above the national average. And we've added 40,000 more degrees to our count. Our local higher ed institutions are producing 2,500 more degrees annually than when we started. So today is part celebration of that progress. And feel free to put your little clap signal up. But just as in 2010, today we are trying to climb out of a recession, this time with the transcendent shift to a digital economy. Then we also faced highly racialized student outcomes, and now the pandemic has laid bare the vast inequities in our society. And in particular, the digital divide has shown those inequities in education. So this summit is also a chance to reflect together not only on what we've achieved, but also what we've learned, and to understand who's working to create more equitable access to education and skills that lead to those family supporting wages, and to exchange ideas about what to tackle next. Our goal is that you leave this summit proud of our community's constancy of purpose and willingness to face hard facts, and with a sense of momentum, with ideas and inspiration to fuel the work ahead. A special thanks to the James Graham Brown Foundation and CENS Foundation, whose support made the report, the final report that you'll hear about, and this event possible. I'm thrilled to say we have 145 people registered from many backgrounds and sectors. We have students, college presidents, superintendents, counselors, business people, funders, social service providers, and many more. So please engage in the breakouts so your voice is heard. So to get us started, let's just take a quick visual look at the past 10 years working together. Video, please.
Ten years ago, our community set an ambitious goal. By 2020, 50% of Louisville's working age population would have a college degree. We knew it would require all hands on deck.
UPS has 2 college programs that we offer. One's called Metro College and one's called Earn and Learn.
Businesses, government, K-12 and higher education, civic groups, and social services. We knew it would be hard, but that it had to be done.
So it's really simple. You get 1 degree at a time.
And so Louisville got to work.
This is game-changing.
We're also very focused on trying to galvanize people around action.
Are you guys looking at going to college?
From big institutions to individuals, our partners got involved and took action. 10 years of aligned goals and collective work has gotten us to where we are now, a more educated city looking at the next decade and beyond. So what's next? Where do we see momentum? What needs more focus and more investment? Let's talk, Louisville.
Okay, so Mayor Jerry Abramson got us started, but it was Mayor Greg Fisher who embraced this goal and took it to a new level, made lifelong learning one of his top priorities, calling on all of us to be involved. He has been a champion of education as a driver of prosperity and access to opportunity. He pushed us to understand the trends, sometimes that was painful, and to align our strategies from cradle to career. He's held high expectations for us and for Louisville, envisioning a place where all can reach their human potential. It's my great pleasure to ask Mayor Greg Fisher to share some of his thoughts and reflection. Mayor?
All right. Well, thanks, Mary Gwen. It's great to see you. And it's great to see everybody on the screen, although I'm sure like you all, it's kind of bittersweet. It's like, I just miss moving around the community and being with everybody. And those days will be coming here soon. So let's stay tough to there. But thanks everybody for joining us here today. And yes, as Mary Gwen said, when I became mayor about 10 years or so ago, I said there were going to be three primary values that were going to guide us as a city: compassion, health, and lifelong learning. And over the last 10 years, there is no organization that or effort that better represents all three of those values coming together than what's happened here in 55,000 degrees. The mayor is the chair of 55,000 degrees. So it's a position that I said, yes, I enthusiastically accept that. And it was clear that in order to have impact on post-secondary degree attainment and grow and develop our workforce long-term, we had to look at the larger framework. And that's how 55,000 degrees grew into cradle to career. So people could succeed at every one of these levels. So yes, it was about getting a degree, but we also had to broaden the perspective to get there from cradle to career. And we created that framework with an incredible coalition of community partners: Metro United Way, Ready for K Alliance, JCPS, Kentuckiana Works, and Metro government, working to close the equity gaps in our K-12 system, including the need to provide early childhood resources to children and families so more of our youngest students could be ready to learn on day one. And then we also recognized the need to help more graduates prepare for the workforce. So we worked with our higher ed partners to help students transition to and through college with work-ready skills through programs like SummerWorks, which celebrated its 10th anniversary just this past summer. So it was all about the handoff from Ready for K all the way through 21st century careers and those four pillars in cradle to career. So it was just really amazing work how all of this came together. And when you put all that together, and this partnership, as Mary Gwen said, has helped now 40,000 new degrees, create better, more prosperous lives, greater possibility for stability, not just for the individuals, for the families themselves, the role modeling that the younger brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews see when you attain that degree. What we've also seen throughout this journey is that many of the degree attainers were first in their families to get a post-secondary degree. And we know that post-secondary education is the greatest disruptor of poverty, period. And that means the impact of this work that we've done through 55,000 degrees is really what's contributed to our community's movement when we see tens of thousands of people have moved into the middle class over where we were before so that they can have family supporting wages. So I'm just really grateful to all the partners who made this possible and has given us a great foundation for the work ahead. We can't say we're done right now. This is now how we move into Evolve 502. Just reflecting a little bit on this year, obviously it has been one unlike any of us have seen before with COVID, economic downturn, righteous calls for racial justice. We've got to now redouble our commitment to this effort, because one of the things we're seeing is that some folks are saying, I'm not ready to get a post-secondary degree right now. It could be finances, it could be trauma, it could be just mental health fatigue. And so we don't want to take this step back. So we've got to continue to focus on equity, make a more equitable economy. And that means doing more to destroy barriers such as systemic racism in our community, in our country, poverty, lack of resources, prevent way too many Louisvillians from reaching their full human potential. And so that takes us to where we're at from our continuum of 55,000 degrees, cradle to career, Evolve 502. Evolve 502 was created because what we saw in cradle to career was the common constraint for moving through each one of those pillars was poverty. And so how do we attack poverty and the impacts of poverty, wrapping full child supports around each kid, and then have a promised scholarship at the end of high school. So as everybody knows, it's been about 3 weeks now when we announced the achievement of the first milestone for scholarships, where every JCPS student from freshman to senior right now has a 2-year scholarship at either JCT or Jefferson or Simmons College, and then an opportunity to move to U of L if you're Pell eligible as well. So I just think about that for a moment, the work with Jefferson, with Spalding, with Simmons, with U of L. And if you're a mom or dad that's under-resourced in our community right now, you can say to your child that, okay, we've got wraparound supports, we get through high school together, there's no financial constraint to you getting a post-secondary degree right now. So there's not a lot of cities that can say that. And it's the work that started with 55K that really got us to this amazing, amazing milestone that we've done together. So I would just want to say that is huge for our city and a dream that many of us have had for an awful long time. We're also focusing on work outside of degrees. We need to put even more emphasis on the work that's being done with our tech skills training. As Mary Gwen said, we're moving to more and more of a digital economy every hour. So programs like Code Louisville, Tech Louisville, our partnership with Microsoft through the Future of Work, all are extremely important. And while we do that, we've got to just relentlessly attack barriers that are in our community. And there's no bigger one than racism. I signed an executive order declaring racism as a public health crisis just this last week to highlight the city's efforts to advance racial equity with all the many partners that are on this video call with us as well. So destroying racism is an aspirational goal that we have to do, that we must move forward on each and every day. But I feel good. I know that we've got the foundation in our community. 55K has demonstrated that between partnerships, we've developed compassion and our shared belief that our hometown and the power of lifelong learning is absolutely essential for everybody to realize their full human potential. So I'm really looking forward to the work ahead. I've got 2 years left as mayor. I'll be spending every day on the work of equity, on the work of education, and all of you all have just made an incredible contribution to this effort. So I'm just very proud of the work of 55K and the tenacity that the team has shown each and every day as we've gotten through this. And closing out, 2 special shout outs of thank yous. One to Tori Murden McClure. President McClure has been invaluable in terms of keeping 55K and Evolve 502 moving forward each and every day. So Tori, thank you for the amazing work that you've done. And then I also want to thank Mary Gwen Wheeler. Mary Gwen has shown incredible leadership and dedication and passion to education for as long as I've known her, for decades I've known her, and the public has been able to see that through the realization of 55K. So Mary Gwen, I say to you, great job. I want to give you something virtually here that I'll give you sometime in person here. Don't give out a lot of these, but here is a key to the city that I want to give Mary Gwen Wheeler for her amazing work as she's opened the door to so many people in this community to opportunity through 55,000 degrees. So great job, everybody. Look forward to seeing you all around soon. And Mary Gwen, again, thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we all want to echo that thanks for Mary Gwen. From the very beginning, 55,000 degrees has been committed to focusing on the data, and the relentlessness with which we have as a community looked at that data, sometimes with great joy and sometimes with definitely less than joy. But I think that's been a hallmark of what 55,000 degrees has done. The other piece that has been so powerful has been the commitment of 55,000 degrees to a process of bringing our community together, to empowering voices and empowering individuals, creating connections and community that when I look at this screen, I can see so many faces that have been involved at various points and then shifted roles and continue to be involved and then shifted roles and are no longer even in this community, but are still back for this event to be a part of not just the process of celebrating and 55,000 degrees, but also thinking about what comes next. And so that's a really exciting part of what we're doing today. One of the things that 55,000 degrees has done so well is take advantage of that community to create ideation, to create powerful interactions and relationships. And the unenviable task of making some sense of that for this has gone to Dr. Tate Kellogg. She is the Director of Research and Strategic Services at Higher Ed Insight and has helped many communities to help make sense of their educational initiatives. She and her team have created a remarkable report, I think only made possible by her passion for gumbo. She has a personal experience and passion with this dish that brings together all of these various spices and ingredients and simmers them over time. And I can only imagine that that was actually the key to you creating something that we're excited to hear about now. So, Dr. Tate Kellogg.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I guess still good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tate Kellogg. Thank you for that colorful introduction, Ben. Ben asked me to share a fun fact about myself, and I told him I lived in New Orleans from the Gulf Coast, and I love to make gumbo. So in case you're wondering why he shared that just now, you all know Ben, so you all know the color and joy he brings to everything. Thank you to Mayor Fisher. Thank you to Mary Gwynn. As Ben did say, our team at Higher Ed Insight is really passionate about this project, about degree attainment broadly, but we've really, really enjoyed being a part of putting together the report that you all have. John, if you could put a link to that in the chat, just in case anyone doesn't have it right in front of them. I am going to give you just a taste of it today. This is not going to be a long academic presentation. It's just going to be a little taste so that I hope you all will go and read it and hear the voices from your community that are lifted up within it. So the purpose of this report was that we were, there's been tremendous learning, as we all know, as we're going to see in a lot of different ways today, that took place for Louisville as a result of 55,000 degrees. So we were hired to do this retrospective analysis just to document that learning and really lift up the different things that happened over the last decade. Our study is based on two main sources of data. So one, we did a document analysis of a lot of Mary Gwynn's material. So we counted up a total of 294 documents. So these are things like board meeting minutes, grant applications, campaigns, a lot of things you've probably seen around Louisville, or maybe you've been a part of in small meetings across the last decade. And we did some coding, what we call coding with qualitative methods, but we did a lot of memos really to document what happened and really figure out what changes occurred over time in order to put this story together in a way that we could share with all of you. The second source of data was key stakeholders, and we actually interviewed quite a few people. This is a really large number for what we typically do. There's just been a lot of people involved and important to 55,000 degrees over the last decade. So we talked to 22 of you. I bet many of you are on the call now, and that was really the qualitative data that informed the findings that you're going to see today. So I'm not going to go into the whole great story of 55,000 degrees. Again, it's really laid out in the report. I did want to show you this kind of overview timeline, which outlines some of the highlights of what happened in the last decade. The big one I want to point out is May 13th, 2010. So 10 years ago now, the Greater Louisville Education Commitment was signed by many leaders across the community. And that really launched 55,000 degrees, which in essence was stakeholders across Louisville working in concert to build a culture towards moving toward degree attainment. So it started with aiming high. I love how Mayor Fisher was known for saying 1 degree at a time. How are we going to do 55,000 degrees? We're going to do it one at a time. But this big goal was really key to the success of 55,000 degrees. The second way that we really wrote this story was really centering learning. So 55,000 degrees has been a very learning-oriented organization, but also movement across Louisville. Learning has been key here. Data has been key. And we talked about that a lot in the report when it came to this, some midpoint pivots that happened along the way, which really were a result of willingness to learn and change and grow over time. And all of that led to the, one of the reasons we're all here today is just the great achievement that has happened in Louisville as a result of coming together in this way. One key aspect of 55,000 Degrees has been collective impact, especially in the first 5 years. And 3 elements of collective impact that were really successful for 55,000 Degrees were: 1, convening the table, bringing everybody together around a goal. 2 was being backed in data. Data was one of the main themes by far that came up in our interviews, and the willingness to constantly look at the data and make decisions based on the data was really important for what worked well. And then finally, this term from collective impact is called mutually reinforcing activities, which is essentially a lot of different groups on this call representing universities, funders. We have a long list of who was involved in this. Those were all key to people coming together, collectively coordinating activities. Have to lift up this quote from Mayor Fisher here. It says, "When you think about how to solve big problems from a business standpoint, you say, we need a cross-functional solution here. We've got to bring in people from different parts of the system to take a look at what's going on." And that was the design of 55,000 Degrees from the beginning. Very quickly, I do want to highlight a few of the headwinds that happened. There were some challenges in the last decade, and that we all know there are several ahead as well as we're thinking about the year 2020. But since the Great Recession, a lot of states did cut higher education funding, post-secondary funding. Unfortunately, Kentucky is in the bottom 10 of those that have not brought that funding back. So Kentucky is spending an average of about $2,800 per student per year less in this decade than they were a year before, which is a big challenge. Relatedly, that financial burden has been shifted at the 4-year level to students and families. So if you see the list of institutions here, all of these institutions have had increases in tuition. We know that happens pretty much all the time, but this is actually net price. So this calculates things like grants and scholarships. Ultimately, what students are paying is a lot more at our 4-year institutions locally. So that's a big challenge for higher education. And then there's quite a bit about the K-12 system. A large urban system has, a number of different elements that we want to look at for what's happening. And one of the big challenges is that college rates of JCPS students has gone down over the last decade when it comes to who's actually enrolling directly after graduating, which is a big challenge as well. Despite these challenges, here's the image I want you to look at and really walk away from. The red line here is the 50% goal. And so 50% was not achieved, but this line went up quite a bit. So we're looking at 46% today of Louisvillians now have a degree, which is nearly 8-point increase over time. I loved how the mayor brought this to life, right? Like, I'm used to looking at data. I think anyone's been involved in 55K is used to looking at this chart. But what we're talking about here is, individuals, families that have changed. And then overall for Louisville has moved up 1 rank in degree attainment compared to peer cities in the last decade. And these different initiatives have made a big impact on that. So what I want you to walk away from is not 55,000 degrees, but 40,000 degrees have been added, not 50%, but 46%. And that's a big change, something that can be celebrated for Louisville. More educated city in 2020 than it was a decade ago. Numbers alone do not tell the whole story. And that's a big reason that we did this report. That's what we wanted to document. So there's quite a few different things that happened that are more qualitative, things that really, changed in the community. So 55,000 degrees, for example, led Louisville to coalesce around a common goal. This quote from Ty Handy says, "There has been no community I have been in that has been more concerned about education achievement and the hope divide and the challenges as this one." Now, we're a big cumbersome place, so actually licking the problem is a different issue. But just coming together around this common goal is a really big deal. And related is just embedding collective impact in the DNA of the city. 55,000 degrees established that data, again, data was key. Data is one of the big ways to drive focusing stakeholders around a goal. So Teresa Reno Weber said, I think that one of the most compelling pieces of 55,000 degrees, the goal is in the name. The data point is there. There was a recurring theme and cadence to meeting and looking at the data, reporting out to the community. There was also the ability at some point to ring a bell, sound an alarm, and say that we're not going to get there. So that really fits with our learning-oriented organization finding when it comes to 55,000 degrees and Louisville in this attainment goal. The ability to pivot using the data. 15K, the corollary organization devoted entirely to degree attainment for Black Louisvillians, was lifted up a lot in interviews as a key success, in addition to other equity efforts at the University of Louisville, at the community college, etc. Issues of racial equity certainly came up. So here are 2 quotes relevant to that. 15K's approach of a specific goal organization infrastructure for engaging credential attainment within the Black community in Louisville was and remains a very innovative and unique angle. That's from Haley Glover at the Lumina Foundation, who works with a lot of similar degree attainment organizations and initiatives, and was able to lift this up without even being asked, that this was one of the big successes in her mind at 55,000 degrees and 15K in particular. Audwin Helton said, a result of 55,000 degrees being a champion for equity is that participating in it has helped the business community to fully understand equity versus equality. And also, adult learners is another real, important point here, that 55,000 degrees recognize the importance of adult learners when it comes to community level degree attainment and adding more degrees. And it was really recognized, especially from people like Haley Glover from an outside perspective, as being ahead of its time for Louisville and 55,000 degrees to lift that up. Another big win is that post-secondary institutions, locally are producing more degrees. So Louisville institutions made numerical and equity gains in college persistence, graduation, and degree completions. And the number to walk away from here is that 2,500 more degrees are being produced annually in Louisville than a decade ago. So that's a big win as well, the higher ed level. Very quickly, I'm just going to go through some lessons learned. So using data to raise issues of equity is important, but it's only a first step here. So 55,000 degrees. Also, they made intentional choices, the leaders of this organization and the initiative, to commit to equity and education attainment from its inception. But we all know, as Mayor Fisher just lifted up, that structural racism and barriers around poverty have to be addressed very directly if gaps are to be made when it comes to attainment for Black and Latinx community members. So more work to be done there, of course. I'm sorry, I believe that I have clicked on the wrong slide here, but that's okay. You guys get where I'm going from here. And then, a big goal here has been work to raise degree attainment among adult learners. And that's been a real challenge. So adult learners with some college, no degree, are not always the low-hanging fruit that we hope they will be, these kind of comebacker community members. Michael Gritton had a quote specifically about degrees at work, which said, "We were starting to make progress, but we weren't making it fast enough to keep the startup alive. The only way it's going to work to build something like this that directly helps adult learners is if you have government or outside funding to sustain it." So there's more work to be done ahead for the city of Louisville when it comes to adult learners. And then finally, big learning is that bringing previously siloed sectors to the table around a common goal measured by data is necessary, but not sufficient. So ultimately, there is a limit to collective initiatives' influence, and that's something that's really being considered in this next era. So we're here today to learn, but we're also here to celebrate the increased attainment for the city of Louisville. 55,000 degrees is sunsetting. It was built on a time-bound goal, but it's leaving behind a culture of data, of collaboration across sectors, and I really think of purposefulness around post-secondary attainment for the community of Louisville. Future initiatives in Louisville, which include the legacy organization of Vol 502, which we'll talk more about in a minute, are going to build on this learning for the next era. So thank you so much for having us today and for all being here together to celebrate the achievements of this initiative.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kellogg. I think you did a remarkable job of pulling together the essential flavors out of the various pieces of our community gumbo here. And I think you highlighted some of the really powerful both successes and failures that we have had. And I think one of the really powerful things about this initiative is that we continue to learn. We continue to learn as a community. We continue to learn as individuals. And one of the things that this organization has done that I think you highlighted is helping us to figure out how to embed the work and learnings that we have made along the way into the institutions that have sustainability and will continue to serve partly Evolve 502, but also the colleges and JCPS and all of the other institutions that are through the Cradle to Career pipeline, from Ready for K, Kentuckiana Works, and others. So thank you for highlighting so many of those things. One of the other really powerful pieces of 55,000 Degrees is a commitment to highlighting community voices, and that when we make the colossal community investment that is gathering a set of people of this caliber and talent together, we don't have that be a passive, those people just take things, information, and then we hope they go do things. It is really building those connections and also creating ways for the voices to be lifted who aren't always heard in these kinds of settings. And that commitment is made very clear in the investment in Adair Cates, who is our co-facilitator here. She is a certified guide and faculty member who specializes in creating value out of remote learning and engagement experiences. She's led thousands of these conversations, and I can tell you from the experience of being part of the planning, she is relentless in her both skill and enthusiasm for getting voices together around the right process. So I'd like to hand over to Adair.
Yeah, thank you so much for that intro, Ben. And hello again, everybody. I met a lot of you at the very beginning through some of your comments in the chat. And just saying, echoing what Ben just shared, many of you, I think, are missing. Well, why don't we just see? How many of you raise your hand if you're missing seeing some of the people on the Zoom screen in person? Yeah, looks like a good majority of you. So what we're going to do is present an opportunity for you to reflect on a story of impact around the work that 55K has been doing over the last 10 years, and then move into breakout rooms to have a conversation with some of the people that you've been missing over the last several months. So if you're down to do that, give me a thumbs up, and then go ahead and grab your pen. Just wave your pen up in front of your screen so I know you're ready to go. Ready, grab your pen. You're going to be invited to reflect for just a moment. I'm going to put some music here in the background. And I invite all of you to grab something to write on as well. Blank sheet of paper, Post-it note, whatever you got laying around there. Maybe one of your kids' dry erase boards from homeschooling, whatever you got. And what I'd like for you all to do is to think back on the last 10 years that 55K, the initiative of 55K, has been active in the city of Louisville. And I'd like for you all to think about a particular story of impact with the areas that 55K reaches. So specifically the areas of degree attainment, creating a college-going culture, lifting that up, and also inviting and collaborating to create a more educated workforce. So think about a particular story, a particular example, maybe that impacted you, your family, maybe it was something through your work, maybe it was directly through 55,000 Degrees because you worked really closely with that initiative. Maybe it was an organization that you volunteered with. But I'd love for you to right now think of a specific story of impact. And I'm going to give you a few thought joggers to get your minds going. And just take some notes as I'm writing these down, whatever comes to mind. What happened exactly? What is the particular story of impact? Who was involved? Who was impacted? Who was involved? Directly, indirectly? Maybe there were some superpowers that emerged in you or in those that were participating. Or perhaps there were some lessons that you learned. One of the most important things, and Tate highlighted this earlier, in any type of initiative like this is to be thinking about what did we learn through the process? So in your particular story of impact, what lessons did you learn? So I'm just going to give you maybe a minute or so to reflect quietly. And then we're going to put you into breakout rooms to have a conversation in just a moment. What is the story of impact of the last 10 years? A time you saw Louisville come together around the areas of degree attainment, creating a college-going culture, or a more educated workforce. All right, give me a thumbs up or a wave or a head nod if you came up with a good story that you're ready to share. Awesome. All right, here's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna move you, let's raise our hands. How many of you have been in a Zoom breakout room before? Raise them up. Have you been in a Zoom breakout room before? All right, I'm scrolling my screen. Keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's anybody that's brand new. Who has never, put your hands down, who has never been into a Zoom breakout room? Oh, I see a couple people. This is exciting. It's always fun to, awesome, Charlene, that's awesome. So what you're gonna do when you go into your breakout room is really simple. So you're gonna jump in and there's gonna be 3 of you in there, maybe an odd group of 4. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna each share your story. You might wanna say hello really quickly, introduce yourselves if you don't know one another. But really quickly move into sharing your stories. So each of you are going to take about 2 minutes each. You're just going to be in there for a total of about 7 minutes. So step 1 is going to be to share your story of impact that you just reflected on. And then the second thing that I always invite people to do is to, if you have time after that, just go back and share some appreciations for each other's stories. Share something that really stood out to you about what someone shared, or you can just stay curious with one another. So anytime that you might have left over, stay engaged, stay in conversation. Again, each of you will have about 2 minutes, go around, share, and then come back and appreciate each other's stories or just stay curious in your breakout rooms. All right, so we're gonna, in just a second, not quite yet, John, you're gonna see a blue button pop up on your screen. Hopefully, those of you are, many of you are familiar with that button. Some of you are new, all good. If you just click that, you'll be teleported into a Zoom breakout room with 2 other people where you're gonna have an engaging conversation. All right, if you're ready to go in, give me a thumbs up. Let's see some thumbs up. All right, here we go. John, if you'll go ahead and put the button up, we'll see you guys back here in about 7 minutes. Because we know that there were some really great conversations that happened in those breakout rooms, we'd love to bring some of that energy back into the big room with just a few share outs. So we'd love to hear from 2, 3, 4 of you. What was something inspiring or insightful or impactful that either you shared or that you heard in your breakout room? So if you can go down to participants, there's a place for you to raise your blue digital hand. I like to call it your Smurf hand. So if you want to jump down to participants, you can raise your blue digital hand. I'd love to hear from 2, 3, 4, 5 of you. Some really quick rapid fire shares into the room. What was something inspiring, something that surprised you, something that was insightful that was shared? Ashley, jump on in, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Ashley Parrott. I work with the mayor's office. And what I shared in my group was college signing day. My first couple of years when I started in the mayor's office, a college signing day was one of the first projects that I was plugged into through 55K. Just seeing all of the students who were, excited about transitioning to college, wearing their t-shirts and packed into the Yum Center at the time. And there was a DJ on the stage. It felt like a big party. And I thought to myself, I have relatives who live in rural parts of Kentucky who don't have resources that 55K provided. And I immediately took that and said, how can I support them along the way? And so I've been helping one cousin in particular navigate through that path. So
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, and also for being the first to share. Everybody put your hand up. Ashley, put your hand up. We're going to give you a high five. Ready? On the count of three, everybody put your hand up. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you so much for that. We're going to hear from a couple more. Tess, jump on in. Love to hear from you. Something that was surprised you or inspired you from your breakout.
So sure. So when 55,000 Degrees started, the CENS Foundation was also funding a project down at Western High School to create an early college so students could earn college degrees while they were still in school. And in my first meeting down at Western High School, I met a young woman who our community knows much better now. Her name is Nakia Rhodes. And Nakia was very interested in the culinary program at Western and went on to be just incredibly successful in her high school career, earned her culinary degree locally. And recently she teamed up with one of our local chefs, nationally known Edward Lee, to start a community kitchen that is about feeding folks in need in our community. And as we've seen over the past, well, this year, inequity and need are much greater. And I read an article, I think on Friday, that said that out of the kitchen that Edward put Nakia in charge of, they have now delivered a million meals to this community. And I just think about this young woman who channeled this incredible passion, took advantage of this opportunity to learn, and now she's given back to our community in a way that is just staggering at a moment when we needed it most. And she's using her leadership of that kitchen to bring other students along and help them get on a similar path. And that's just amazing.
Wow, that is an incredibly inspiring story there. Wow, saw lots of head nods. It sounds like a lot of people are familiar with Nakia's story. So thank you for presencing that for us, Tess. Thank you so much. We're going to hear from a couple more, and then I'm also going to invite Dr. Polio to share. Teresa, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I know so much of this is a focus on the young people in our community, but when I first started at Louisville Metro Government, and then even when I came over to Metro United Way, one of the things that I really loved about 55K was also the degrees at work and the inspiration and the opportunity to get adults back into getting their degrees, finishing and completing their degrees. And when you think about the example that that sets for children in the home and in the community, there were so many inspiring individuals who were just one credit or one semester away from completing their degrees. I saw it happen at Metro Government. I saw it happen at Metro United Way. And that commitment that our employers made to individuals in their workforce to go back and complete their degrees, I thought was something that was just also truly inspiring.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for bringing that to us as well, Teresa. Really appreciate that. All right, we're going to hear from Laura, and then Dr. Polio, we're coming to you. All right, Laura, jump on in.
Hi, thanks for letting me do this. I have worked with the Central High School Law and Government Partnership. I helped start that when I was Dean of the Law School. And our law students teach over there. And the success I'd like to share, that I shared with my small group, was the fact that we currently have 7 or 8 students who graduate from that program who are in law school right now, including at University of Chicago, WashU, St. Louis, 3 or 4 at U of L, a couple at UK, and we have others who have already graduated. And the support that we get continuously, Diane Porter is a huge supporter of ours, Marty Polio, I can't say enough. The 3 principals that we've had during the last 20 years at Central High School have always made that supportive. And then I work with the University Community Partnership Advisory Board a lot, which provides additional, and sort of knowing these networks are out there and people are interested and supportive is huge. And I just want to share that success and that we're hoping to build on it. And there comes my granddaughter again. Okay, I'm going to go off now. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you for that, Laura. And thank you for that real Zoom moment. We've all had at least 1 or 2 of those over the last 8 months. So awesome. Dr. Polio, I'd love to invite you to share anything that was inspiring or insightful from your breakout room.
Yeah, thank you. I think I was wondering if I accidentally raised my blue hand there or not.
It was raised for you.
I got called on. And yeah, we had a great conversation in the 7 minutes, but I'll just kind of share what I said. And I apologize if some people were on our happy hour, virtual happy hour a couple of weeks ago in Toast. But, 55K for 10 years. I was a principal when it was first signed. And I saw Dr. Berman on here, so it's great to see Dr. Berman again. I was a principal when Dr. Berman signed this and was superintendent. And showed great leadership with that as well. But I just remember knowing that, okay, this that symbolically this was so important to the community that the class of 2011 at J-Town High School, and then the rest of the time I was there, we made every single graduate, they had to be accepted to a college. And so we've had this powerful moment at our graduation ceremony. And I remember the first time how powerful it was, because we went through this process where we would say things like, anyone who is in National Honor Society, please stand up and be recognized. Anyone who completed in athletics, please stand up and be recognized. And the very last one we did was, every graduate from the class of 2011 that has been accepted into college or post-secondary institution, please stand. And all 280, whatever, some odd kids stood up at the same time, and the applause and the energy in the room was just awesome. And that was because of 55,000 degrees. And I think two great things have happened as a result of 55,000 degrees as well. Number one, I believe it's an important part of the academies of Louisville, the restructuring of the academies of Louisville and moving to that model. And without a doubt, it's the foundation for Evolve 502, which I think is just a game changer. So that's it. The final thing I'll say is a lesson that I've learned that I think we need to continue to focus on. In the past couple of years specifically, as we have given out some scholarship dollars, I think it's so important for all 105 people on here to understand this. How many of our children leave school, graduate, and get accepted, and they may have their first semester paid for or their first year paid for, but have no plan of how they're going to continue to pay for that after year one or even semester one. And that's been a frightening revelation to me. And that's why I think Evolve 502 is going to be such a game changer, because kids now, as early as their freshman year and even earlier, will now be able to see that they have a pathway to have post-secondary paid for. But it is something we need to continue to be mindful about, because I think it is a great barrier to kids being successful once they get into post-secondary, is having no consistent plan. So we're working with our counselors to improve that, but I think community-wide, we need to keep that focus. But I can't say enough about how much this has had a positive impact on JCPS and the graduates.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Dr. Polio. And thank you to all of you who shared there and for being actively engaged in our breakout rooms. Ben, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, one of the things that has been powerful about 55,000 degrees is that well before the current righteous calls for equity and justice, this organization was committed to the centrality of equity to the mission, and recognizing of the essential but not exclusive importance of education to achieving any kind of vision for equity as a community, and really focusing on lifting up the voices of those who were going to be most affected or potentially most affected into this process. So it is my pleasure to introduce someone who one of her many superpowers is in elevating the voices of the community into community conversations, and that is Dana Jackson. I'm so excited to see your face. I have missed all of the interpersonal pieces. And Dana is going to lead a conversation with two other folks who have dedicated huge parts of their lives, time, and soul to that mission, Audwin Helton and Laura Smith. So I'm going to hand it over to Dana.
Great. Thank you, Ben. It's good to see everybody. And I am delighted to have this conversation with Audwin and Laura. I know you guys know these folks, but I feel like I need to do just a little bit of an introduction. Audwin Helton is the president of Spatial Data Integration and also the co-chair of 15,000 Degrees. Audwin was a founding member of the initiative. And then Laura, who is a very important key partner to 15K, is the vice president of student affairs and the dean of students at Jefferson Community and Technical College. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about 15K and some of the successes and a flagship partnership that we have with Jefferson. Many of you guys know that 15,000 Degrees was born out of the 55K initiative. It was born from Black leaders who at the time said, we need to put some sturdy stakes in the ground around African-American educational attainment. And we need to make sure that equity is always on the agenda, not just as a value, but as an action. And that's what the initiative has done. So Adwin, I've got a couple of questions for you, and then also a couple of questions for you too, Laura. Hi, Laura, good to see you. Adwin, you know, today is really a time of reflection and celebration and learning. As you reflect on 15K, what are you most proud of?
Well, thanks, Dana. And first of all, I have to make reference to Ben's reference to you as a superpower, because you are. And when I think about the whole equity versus equality, that's Dana's forte, and she introduced that to all of us several times. And then another superpower, Alice Houston, also co-chairs. But when I reflect, I think about that table where we did ask the other signers of the Mayor's Education Roundtable if we could take a look at degree attainment for African Americans in Louisville. And all of the other signers wholeheartedly agreed. So we did so. And that was the birth of 15K. And when all of you work with us at 15K, you know that when it comes to African American education attainment, 15K will be at the table, and we have been at the table. So when I reflect back, I think about Dean Blaine Hudson. And as I said to another group, when we wanted to think about how we could get involved, we called upon Blaine to help us. In this year 2020, when we fight for justice on all fronts, part of the response we got back from Dean Hudson and going back to his days was about education and injustices in how do we help our young Black kids get a great education. So when I reflect back, then I always think about Dean Hudson challenging us. And that's where the name 15K came from. Some of the data that Dean Hudson presented, 15,000 of those degrees should be, of the 55,000 degrees, should be for African Americans. So Dana, long answer to your short question, I'm sorry.
I think it was a great answer. I think it was an awesome answer. So that's looking back. Let's look forward very quickly. What should the community know about the work of 15K as we move forward?
And we're still on the battleground. As you know, Dana, since you're one of the leaders here with 15K, we're always thinking about scholarships. At our last meeting, we talked about our annual scholarship fund. You'll hear Laura talk about Rise Together. That has been a tremendous program that was birthed. Ty will remember when Alice and I spoke to him. And of late, we decided to partner with the Academy's program at Shawnee, where their graphic design program will work with us to rebrand 15K. So for all the folks here who are working with the Academy's program, we're going to make very good use of the students and faculty and staff at Shawnee Academy, and they will help us to rebrand ourselves. That will be interesting because we will be getting youth voice. And I understand those youth are looking forward to talking to us and telling us how we're old school and working with social media. So they're ready to tell us how we move into the future with social media. So I'm looking forward to that, Dana.
Very nice. Thank you, Adwin. So it sounds like 15K isn't going anywhere.
I think you already know the answer to that, but thanks for prepping me with that answer. We do not intend to go anywhere. And in fact, we do not intend to change our name. One of the things that we always so proud of is working with all of you in our various networks, working with JCPS, the Urban League, Sadiqa, and Kish on our planning committee that meets monthly. So yeah, we plan on staying in the game and working just as hard. And you all know that Alice co-chaired the Say Yes for JCPS, and Dana and I were on that committee with her. And so that was part of 15K as well.
Very nice. Thank you, Adwin. So Laura, we're going to transition over to you. We know that the academic achievement gap and just the corona gap and racialized outcomes are, really present, and we are going to have to double down. One of the partnerships that 15K has is with JCTC that's called Rise Together, that is about African-American education, enrollment in post-secondary academic excellence and graduation. And we are really pleased to partner with you all on that. So, you know, we've been at this a couple of years with Jefferson now. Laura, tell us a little bit about why this initiative is so important to Jefferson.
Thanks, Dana. The first thing I do want to just give credit to you and to 15,000 Degrees, because Dana was one of the primary architects of Rise Together. And I remember the first time I heard about it, it was extremely exciting to me. And I got really excited and wanted everybody to know what was to come. And because of Dana and Audwin and all of the folks at 15K, we were able to get this off the ground. And it has become really a national model of what it looks like to have community support behind a groundbreaking equity initiative. So it really is a big deal. And so let me just tell you a little bit about it. So 3 years ago, when we started this, about half of the African-American students at Jefferson resided in one of the 5 neighborhoods that 15K was really focused on. And although as a college, we were showing an upward trend in our statistics on student success, there was still a significant equity gap, and that had to be addressed. And Rise Together was one of the ways that we wanted to address that. So with this program that is specifically for African-American students, the students in the program have access to a success coach. They have connection to college and community supports and resources. They have a mentor that's a campus mentor and a community mentor. They've taken trips to 4-year institutions with a specific focus on visiting HBCUs and getting students excited about their life beyond Jefferson and what the possibilities are. They've had access to arts and networking with African-American business leaders in the community. And it's just been tremendous. And one of the other things that makes it really special is the close community that's built among the participants. And they take a few classes together and really build a very strong peer support network that has just proven to be monumentally important in their success. So we have now seen the students in Rise Together have outpaced not only their African-American peers, but outpaced the success rates across the college when it comes to GPA and retention. So it has just been a phenomenal program, and we are so excited that now much of what we've learned through Rise Together is available now and expanded beyond those 5 neighborhoods.
Very nice. So there have been some system shifts. Could you maybe take our last minute and talk a little bit about how Rise Together has changed Jefferson's system and, you know, shifted the way that the college does its business?
Yes, I will try to make it as quick as I can. So a lot of good things have come from this, and what we have learned from students and their experience helped us clarify some of the non-academic barriers that get in the way of student success. And so through Rise Together, we have really, we began to understand more of the importance of a single stop service center for students. And so although we already knew this was a need, the Rise Together experience helped us to create a stronger argument and obtain a support from the CENS Foundation, which provided the funding to help us stand up our hub food pantry, which is not only a food pantry, but also a central connection for campus and community resources. That was one big outcome that's been fantastic. Another thing that's happened, as you mentioned, well, earlier you heard the Lumina Foundation was very impressed and supportive of 15K and Rise Together. And because of that, Lumina has provided financial support to Jefferson that's enabled us to have more interns that are paid internships, so we can expand that high touch one-on-one connection and coaching, and that's been tremendous. And then another thing that's been done at the college that's a big change that's very helpful is we've been able to align all of our non-academic support services to have a tighter connection to help with internal referrals to really maximize the wraparound support for students. So lots of good things have happened. The college has made a huge investment in this, and we plan to have this as a integrated, ongoing, long-term, sustainable initiative throughout our college.
Very nice. Thank you, Laura. We appreciate your partnership. And just a quick shout out to the other 15K members on the Zoom. We appreciate your hard work as well. Thank you. I'm going to toss it back to you, Ben.
Thanks so much, Dana. And thank you for all the work for the people on this call who have been recognized and not. The centrality of this focus on equity has never been more apparent than it is right now. One of the other things that 55,000 Degrees has done has really been to fight this perception that we have in Louisville that what we build here is not good enough. We so often as a community look somewhere else to say, oh, they must have the answer. And I think this movement and this organization has done a great job of highlighting our local gems and creating real leadership and step up opportunities. As I look through the participants here, so many people who are now in positions of power and influence because of the work that they did with 55,000 Degrees. And one of those is Dr. Matt Bergman, who is one of the foremost national scholars on adult learning. And we're so lucky to have him here with us today. So Dr. Bergman.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to address the group, and a couple of softballs that were tossed up earlier. Thank you, Teresa, for talking about adult learners and the breakout, getting to hear about some of the adult learners that have come back. If the slides could come up, that would be great. So go ahead and go to the next slide. I want to think just a little bit about the way that we frame adult learners. I heard a phrase the other day that really caught me and made a lot of sense to me, and that was, adult learners are basically diverse and multi-generational learners. If we reframe the way that we think about these individuals, they become part of the fabric of our campus communities. And it's really important because so many institutions are innovating as a result of the pandemic that we now have access to pathways for individuals that otherwise couldn't have joined our institutions. So let's start with a quick reflection exercise. And whether it was last year or long ago, think about some of the words, the feelings, memories that come to your mind when asked what your education truly means to you. I know in my own circumstance, I think about walking across the stage, and it was 20 plus years ago now. And that seems like I'm not that old, but anyway, it wasn't that long ago. And it's so vivid in my mind. And for so many of you, it's probably the same. And whether you are a traditional age student, or you went back, or you are a working learner, that finishing of a degree is probably one of the biggest assets in your life. For others, it may be a total distant memory, but it's laid the groundwork for your professional growth as an individual. But that's just not the case. Next slide. That's just not the case for 36 million people in this country, and specifically 89,000 in the greater Louisville metro area. We have made an impact. There was over close to 100,000, we're down to about 89. But so many individuals don't have that feeling, that excitement, that sense of accomplishment, of finishing a degree, because something happened last year or long ago. And whether that was a deployment, an unexpected child, a job opportunity, over 50% of individuals that stop out are not stopping out because they have failed with bad grades. Life is intervening for these individuals, and universities are now finding ways to mitigate those competing responsibilities so we can get them to the finish line. Next slide. I am so excited about Evolve 502 because it's going to change the nature of what we have as total undergraduate, associate, and post-secondary credentials that are going to make an impact. Unfortunately, what we've seen over the last 11 years is that our enrollment for those 25 and older at four-year publics and KCTCS has declined by like 30,000 students. And that's alarming, but not that surprising, because we are in such an interconnected life that we have to manage so much. And with the pandemic, that has accelerated. And when you think about the competing responsibilities of managing NTI, students at home, your own job from a computer screen, it is really challenging to think about going back. But we're almost over the hump. And when the vaccines come, and when the universities start to, again, market to these individuals that now have their lives back, we have changed, we have innovated, and now we see online, evening, and next slide, online, evening, weekend, We have so many new options that students can engage in, and universities across the country and specifically in our metro area now have manageable course sequencing, compressed online, hybrid. They have fully focused, and you've heard this earlier, effective and efficient coaching and advising for our 15K, as well as all other students. And we are moving towards, through section 127 of the tax code, we are moving forward with this $5,250 that students can have access to and employers can use as a tax deduction to help our individuals graduate without debt. So individuals can go pro early. If they're not college material, as they say, they can easily log on and jump in with an employer that offers tuition assistance and plug in when they're ready and graduate debt-free. In essence, benefiting the employer, benefiting the university with tuition revenue, and in the long range, benefiting those individuals to graduate virtually debt-free because of the tuition assistance that's available with so many employers. We've mentioned UPS. We know that McDonald's has that. We know Walmart. We know that KFC Yum. We know that Papa John's has launched. So we now have employers, if you are an individual that wants to impact and improve your degree attainment, you can go to one of those employers and get tuition free. Next slide. So we know the pathway is not smooth and easy for these individuals, but they want it, they're mission driven, and they're ready to plug into our institutions. So instead of us as institutions saying, well, it didn't work out the last time, we'll give you another chance. We need to reframe that and say, please give us another chance. We are different, we're motivated, and we have pathways that are both convenient and flexible to getting you to the finish line. Thanks for your time, and I'd love to talk to anybody that wants to talk about adult learners or diverse and multi-generational students and some of the research that I do. Thanks.
Thanks, Doc. That was, as usual, awesome. I'd love to transition now to one of the other real superpowers of 55,000 degrees, and part of what somebody said, I think it was Mason earlier in the chat, has made us the envy of many communities, and that is our ability to interconnect the education and workforce ecosystems in meaningful ways. So I want to have a conversation next with Sarah Arisman, Jim Lancaster, and Dr. Alicia McLean. But Sarah, would you go ahead and kick us off and talk a little bit about the framework that you have been using and our community is using around this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a graphic to share with you that will hopefully pop up on the screen that's showing our youth development system that's really come together for young people. It's what most excites me right now is this systems levels change that's happening at Jefferson County Public Schools through the implementation of the Academies of Louisville model. So we at Kentuckiana Works, along with our friends at GLI and of course JCPS, have put a lot of time and energy into making this system a reality. And so the high school experience is just so different now, and it's come together in such a short period of time. It's really quite impressive. So I know the font's really small, and that's because there's a lot going on. It's very exciting, but I'm just going to quickly walk us through it. So beginning in 8th and 9th grade, young people start to think about their skills and interests and how that lines up with the day-to-day of different career pathways. Exposures to different careers is a big part of this exploration process so that young people can think about jobs that they might not be as familiar with. You know, thinking beyond the jobs they know because they have a family member in that profession or because they've seen it on TV, and instead considering, you know, the range of career options that are available in today's labor market. And so at the end of their freshman year, young people actually choose a career academy, you know, such as healthcare, skilled trades, or IT, and the remainder of their high school experience is integrated into this career-themed curriculum. And so by the time they graduate, they could have earned an industry recognized credential, they could have earned dual credit at a local post-secondary institution. Thanks to the partnership of more than 100 local businesses working with the schools, young people hear from local professionals that are actually in the field. They're able to tour local work sites and see what the facility is like. And then they start to gain those work-based learning experiences through summer works and the opportunity for co-ops and apprenticeships their senior year. And so once they reach graduation, they're prepared to enter the workforce. They have that credential, they have that work experience, or maybe they're ready to just seamlessly transition into post-secondary with some college credit under their belt and the support of Evolve 502, or perhaps, some combination of both work and school. And what's so great about this model is that even if young people ultimately don't stick with the career path of their high school academy, they're still just gaining so much. It's so helpful to learn what you do like and also what you don't like at a young age, and making that direct connection between what they're learning and how that applies to real world situations in the workplace will ultimately contribute to greater success on their pathway after high school. And so we're definitely going to share this graphic. I'll throw a link in the chat so you can download it and spend some time with it. But it's really just transformational what's happening at the high school level.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Next, I would love to talk to Jim Lancaster, who has been such a force in our community as an employer, influencing the educational ecosystem on several levels. Jim, can you talk a little bit about what you have seen as some of the real accomplishments of 55,000 Degrees over the last little bit, and then help us look a little bit to the future in terms of what you see coming next?
I think there's a couple things that are pretty phenomenal. First of all, there's been an incredible sort of partnership and engagement by the business community in first of all, the academies of Louisville, but also some real transformation that's gone on at Jefferson Community and Technical College. And I've seen it across a number of businesses in town, which then turned into over 100 that are supporting the academies of Louisville. And I think, this partnership where we have folks at the education institutions that are willing to change and stick business leaders that are willing to jump in and try to help eliminate barriers so we can actually make progress is just really exciting. And there's evidence of that at the academies of Louisville. There's evidence of that with the Kentucky Fame program, the Advanced Manufacturing IT Center that was built most recently here in town. There's evidence of that in various programs that Laura just talked about at Jefferson. So I'm really excited about the fact that we can make a difference moving forward. I think going forward, this is kind of what I'm excited about and concerned about. We have to build a stronger workforce in Louisville. We have to. We've got a significant issue with the skill level of our workforce to be competitive moving forward. The good news is we have a lot of sort of, I'll call them underskilled folks in our community that are sort of a perfect resource if we can get them better skilled. And I think the real focus on equity that's come up in the last 6 months or so gives us the opportunity to put some energy into some new programs and frankly, to make some changes that are hard to make so that we can pull up a lot more folks that currently don't have the education levels that we need.
Thanks, Jim. If I can ask you one more question, what are you nervous about looking forward?
Well, I think it's what I'm always nervous about. It's probably my personality, but I'm nervous that we'll get a little distant from the problem. We've got some basic things that need to change in how we think about educating our students and in connecting the education at our high schools into post-secondary and into the skills that our community needs. And, our community is not the same as other communities. We need to stay very tightly focused on what the issues are with our students so we can help meet them where they are and lift them up. And I think sometimes we can get a little academic about it. And then sometimes the solutions we put in place don't actually connect. So I really want to keep us, I think it's important that we stay focused on where the students in need really are and what they need. And if we do that, I think we'll be successful. So that's kind of my biggest concern. But we've got a lot of evidence that we're doing that. So I'm kind of excited about it.
Awesome. Thanks. I also want to welcome Dr. Alicia McLean, who I am so lucky to have as a colleague at the Future of Work Initiative. Dr. McLean has been working to broaden the pipeline of people going into tech careers, but also helping us to rethink the interconnection between credentials and degrees, and really help to connect employers and young people who might not otherwise think about themselves as being able to be a part of these future careers. Dr. McLean, thank you for being here. I'd love to hear you just reflect a little bit about how we think about shifting the narrative in our community about education and career.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Ben, and it's a pleasure to be here. First of all, I have to correct you just a bit. I'm not quite a doctor yet.
Oh, that's true. Oh, sorry. I'm fast forwarding. One more degree coming soon.
Speak it into existence, but I am working on my dissertation around the sociocultural factors that influence participation of underrepresented and marginalized groups in the fields of computer and data science. And so I think it's really important to highlight that we're trying to connect community to education and education to industry. And that seems like sort of a traditional way to do things, but it's kind of the how of what we're doing that that I think is innovative in its approach. It's an understanding that data science and computer science are a medium. They're a medium to community empowerment. They are a medium, obviously, to a well-paying job, but also an understanding that they are a medium to bettering our society. And this is where the importance of diversity comes in. A lot of times we think of diversity as a philanthropic effort and not as an economic or even selfish effort. It is of the utmost importance. And it is integral to our future as an economy, that we think about who is not represented in these careers. So within our work, some of it programmatic and some of it systems level, we're thinking in those terms of how can we increase diversity, not just from not at all from a philanthropic angle, but from a we need more diversity in technology, in the technology sector. We need more diversity in the in data science. We have a myriad of problems, ethical issues that exist because, honestly, if we're being just frank and completely honest, because we have a lack of diversity in the field, and we're seeking to change that in everything that we do with the future of work.
Thank you so much. So I would just love to hear you reflect briefly on what are you afraid of and what are you excited about as we step into this fourth technical revolution?
I think I'm going to switch the question up. What I'm the most excited about is that there has been a paradigm shift around what I was just talking about, actually. There is a heightened interest potentially and probably, honestly, because of the reckonings that we have had in our society with systemic inequities. There is an incredible amount of interest around increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the field, in addition to doing this fourth technological revolution correctly, right? Being prepared for it as a community, and also thinking about how we can have a rich and robust representation at the table, if you will. And so that's very exciting. It's very exciting. Every conversation I'm in, every panel I'm on, every meeting I'm in, everyone is talking about how do we do this and how can we do it well. But that's also what scares me, to be honest. I don't want to see this as I hope we don't look at this as a passing phase. This is not this is a heavy lift. This is not something that's easy. It's not a box that can be checked. It is a commitment that has to be made, and it's an ongoing. It's almost a lifestyle. And I think sometimes we think of it as a checklist item, and it is like in everything that we do, we have to think about how we frame it. We have to think about how we are intentionally increasing representation of underrepresented groups. And so that's very exciting to me, right? And so, but that's also, It's also scary because I want to see that continue. We can make tremendous strides both in our community and in our society if we continue to move this work forward. So very exciting.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you for your continued leadership. We have talked about this initiative as highlighting a real shift in people who are stepping into those spaces, and we're so lucky to have you in our community doing this work. And speaking of lucky to have in this community, one of the other things that 55,000 Degrees has brought is an ability to really attract national thought leaders with an eye to broadening all of our understanding of what it works and what is important as we seek a common vision for our community. And that's why we are so lucky in that tradition to bring Dr. Andre Perry, who has completed his PhD, to this group to talk about some of the work that he has done. His scholarship is diverse and really fascinating. Some of it focused on education, some of it focused on wealth and Black wealth in particular. He has become a leading national voice in conversations around equity. And we've been lucky to have him in our community not once, but twice in the last little bit. So if you missed his presentation to LCCI, I think that was recorded and is just powerful. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Andre Perry.
Hello, Louisville. I feel like I'm home. I've been engaged with members of the community for the last few weeks, on and off. So I can't wait until this COVID pandemic calms down a bit and you guys can take me to a proper dinner, have a share a good drink. I know Tate has done a lot of good work. We ran across each other in New Orleans a long time ago. So, and I'm going to actually speak a lot from my experiences in New Orleans. So I'm actually just going to pull up my PowerPoint right now. And let's see, play from the start. Hopefully you can see me, and I think we're all good. Seeing the forest for the trees. Once I saw and did a little research on 55,000 Degrees, it became clear to me that there was a lot of learning that took place that certainly may not have been there in the beginning. And so I'm going to really reflect upon my time as a dean, as someone who managed 4 charter schools in New Orleans. I'm also going to talk about my research around wealth and housing in particular. Because I think, and after hearing so many of the speakers, I am sure that you've learned about many of the things that I'm going to present to you today. Again, I think it was Matt Bergman who pointed to his hair and potential loss in hair. But I used to have these long dreadlocks when I was running schools in New Orleans. I no longer have those locks. I cannot have those locks. And it just goes to show you how difficult it is in this education space, very difficult. But I think there's an easier way than how we've done things in the past. When I was a school leader and I ran 4 schools out of the Capital One University of New Orleans charter network, is a private public partnership between the 2 entities. And Capital One invested in a charter management organization and I led that effort. But one of the things I heard constantly when I ran schools in 2006, 2007, beyond 2010, is that this notion, if we can only fix the schools, everything will be all right. And so much of our efforts were predicated on this notion of, what is a good school? What are good schools? And there's many opinions of that. Is it to prepare students for the workforce? Is it to raise standardized test scores? Is it to seeking to develop the mind, body, and emotion, human developmental needs? Is it about removing the vestige of discrimination? For me, it involves all of those things. but so much of our efforts have really said it's one of those things. And that's where we go wrong. We need to see this as a cohesive sort of effort. Good schools are tied to strong communities. A community, and I'll just give a basic definition of community. Community is a group of people who acknowledge their interconnectedness, have a sense of their common purpose, respect their differences, share group decision-making, and support each other's growth. And this is what, there are some important key phrases. Differences. You know, cohesive communities are easy when you have people with similar backgrounds, shared history, they all like pepperoni pizza. When everybody's the same, cohesion is great. Schools have an easier time of it. But when there's differences, that's where it becomes hard to tell what a good school should do and what school reform should address. Keep skipping here. A good education is more likely to occur when our values and political structures manifest the idea that we're all in this together. And based on what I've seen, you're learning that. You know, one of the biggest mistakes I think people make when they set numerical goals are seeing that as the end. You know, one of the questions I received all the time when I was a school leader back then is, what's the fastest way to close the Black-white achievement gap? And it used to drive me nuts. And I used to have this snippy little remark to say, hey, if we stop educating white people, that will close the educational gap. Now, obviously, we don't want to do that. Everyone deserves an education. But in ed reform, we did do a lot of equally nefarious things. We suspended kids at high rates. We fired teachers in New Orleans. We created all kind of rules that sort of hurt the community in our pursuit of higher academic achievement. And so we should never ask, how do we close a gap? Gaps can close. It's how we do it is the question. What's the ethical, moral, organizational factors in how we close gaps? That's what matters. I believe that good communities can engage in a shared educational project. And when I see 55,000 degrees, that's what I think it is. It's a shared educational project. And I'll show you what I mean. I keep skipping here. Hold on. A shared educational project is a vision for education. It's expressed through shared community activities. People participate from all parts of the community. There's a shared language that people understand. So when you say a word that everybody gets it. Now, it's just not the language of the muckety mucks. And I say that I work at a think tank. We love to throw around big language and we like to coin phrases. But if we use that language in the real world, no one gets it. And so you do need a shared language that is truly communal. In addition, shared educational projects, the quality of life growth coincides with educational growth. You don't see educational attainment rise while poverty stays flat. That's a telltale sign that something's missing. And in many communities, you actually see that. People making progress on one measure, but in the areas that truly matter, like employment, like degree attainment, and all these other things, you don't see good change. So you want projects that are shared educational projects in nature. It keeps flipping to the next one. So, and I also want to say this, there are things to consider in a shared educational project. Remember this, wealth predicts for education, not the other way around. And so lots of people will say, get a degree and you'll get wealth. Well, remember, with the rising cost of education, that's for many low income or low wealth students, that's piling on debt. And people, and even though in general, a college degree pays out in the long run, people see the big sticker, the price tag, and they're dissuaded by that. And they should be, because being smart shouldn't make you poor. And so we got to figure out ways to make sure we consider wealth that predicts for education, so we shouldn't burden people in the process. And know that the average white family has 10 times the amount of wealth. And this continues after people get a degree. White college graduates have over 7 times more wealth than Black college graduates. So getting a degree just doesn't erase these things. Now, our housing, criminal justice policies often counter our efforts in education. So we can do all this stuff in education, and if we're not looking over here in another direction, we might be hurting ourselves. And I'm going to just give you an example how this occurs. This is a chart on housing by zip code. Now, if you, on the x-axis, that's where, that's the percentage of black people in a zip code. On the y-axis is indicated on the top row. That's where the average listing price is in that neighborhood. So homes where the share of the Black population is less than 1%, those homes on average are priced about $340,000. And it's pretty linear. As the percent of Black people increases in the neighborhood, the home prices goes down. Now, why is that important in education? We know that municipalities use the price of homes to determine how much taxes they assess on those. And so the home price home prices matter in terms of education, how much money a school brings in. Now, this is what's, so we looked at absolute price. Then we looked at structural character. Oh man, my PowerPoint's jumping ahead, I'm sorry. Absolute price, then we controlled for structural characteristics, meaning we controlled for the size, the number of rooms, all those different things. But we also controlled for neighborhood amenities. So we controlled for education, crime, walkability, all those fancy Zillow metrics. So we could get a sense of an apples to apples comparison between homes in Black neighborhoods and homes in white neighborhoods. And what we found pretty much astounds that homes in Black neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%, about $48,000 per home. Accumulatively, that's about $156 billion in lost equity. Now that is occurring all over the United States. Wherever you see a magenta circle, that's where devaluation is occurring. In Louisville, it's 27%, about $28,000 per home in Black neighborhood in Jefferson County. Now, I just wanted to show how that looks in relative to other places. 81% difference in Lynchburg. Again, these are apples to apples comparison, apples to apples. If you helicoptered a home in a Black neighborhood in Lynchburg and put it in a white neighborhood, it would increase in value by 81%. Rochester, 65, Jacksonville, 47, Louisville, 27. My hometown, Pittsburgh, 11%. There are places where home values are higher in Black neighborhoods, 10% in Nashville, 16% in Wichita, Boston, 23%. But I just want to be clear, Boston is no less racist than Lynchburg or Louisville for that matter. However, home prices are different. So let's proceed. I just want to put this in perspective so that people can understand what I'm talking about. The reason why we need to look comprehensively, that $156 billion would have financed more than 4 million Black-owned businesses, would have paid for more than 8 million four-year degrees, replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan 3,000 times over, 97% of Hurricane Katrina damage, and it's double the economic burden of the opioid crisis. And this is the reason why I say there's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. That we're constantly blaming Black people and brown people for the conditions that they are faced with instead of looking at the policies that produce them. Now, in the housing example, people are doing everything required of them, and money is being robbed from them every day, not because of their doing, but because of policy. And this is the metaphor that we need to look at moving forward. And from what I see and what I'm hearing, this is what you've learned. That it's not enough to just set a numeric goal. That's just a device for us to come together as community so we can see where we need to change structures and where we need to invest. Now I'm going to move on. And I just want to be clear with people. This is a chart by colleague Sean Reardon at Stanford. The green, and this shows the learning gaps in race and the learning gaps in income. The orange line is the gap according to race. Achievement gaps are lowering over time. I mean, we're actually getting better and better and better in terms of race, the racial achievement gap. Now, but when you layer in class, you see this, it's going up, it's worsening. And so that's why, so when we look at wealth and education, there's a lot of ties there. I got a piece coming out today that essentially says, when are we going to find an education secretary? It's too long. I want to hear, I want to hear some names. You heard a lot of names thrown out in terms of that ultimately came to be in terms of the Biden administration. We heard my colleague Janet Yellen. We hear all these names coming about because people are interested in economy. But if there's one thing that I know that is true right now, people are so distressed about schools and when to get back, as well as how we're going to pay for schools to come back safely. This is an economic issue. And we need folks to understand that when we starve schools, when we starve universities, we're starving ourselves. But again, we do that because we're so wedded to this idea, if these kids just work hard, they'll get the degree and they'll get a job. No, there are real structural barriers that fall outside the schoolhouse that prevent advancement. I see Evolve 502 as a great educational project. You're coalescing around equity, but you got to maintain, it's about removing structures and investing in Black and brown communities. Now, what's interesting, I do a lot of work on underappreciated assets, meaning if you just add water, it will grow. Investing in Black and brown children isn't taking away from white kids. But when we invest in Black and brown children, we see an economic and educational growth because of that's where the underinvestment is. Now, one of the phrases I've become, I don't like saying it, I get it, but I don't like saying it. And one of the phrases is data driven. We can lose sight of what we're trying to do. You have to be community driven and use data to improve the community. Too often, we're so focused on a numerical gap that we miss the point. and we focus on the numerical gap, again, there's too many nefarious ways to close a gap, right? And this is leads to my other point. Kids don't live in school, they live in communities. I love Matt's conversation because let me be clear, we love this romantic notion that education is all about the kids. We love to say that, and we understand why. But education is not all about the kids. They are attached to adults, and we need to worry about the education of adults in the process. One thing that is absolutely clear in my reading of Kentucky, since the Great Recession of 2008, not the current one we're in, you've seen a decrease. We still not have recovered to 2008 higher ed funding levels. This is alarming. I mean, we should be very worried about that because a lot of folks are saying, look what's going to have an impact in this current condition by shutting down schools and kids not returning properly. But let's be clear, we've been denying colleges and universities the resources they need for more than a decade in Kentucky, more than a decade. What kind of impact will that have? So when we're talking about Evolve 502, there are some key policies that and funding measures that you got to point to. Again, I talk a lot about housing because the point there is that if you can't get these wealth things right, these financing structures right, you're going to mitigate all of your efforts. In addition, we need to invest in teachers of color. We know that investing in Black and brown teachers pays dividends not only for Black students, but for all students. And if there's anything that we've learned over the last 4 years, or actually even beyond that, folks don't know history. It's this comical, almost comical critique of the 1619 Project. Points to the need to understand slavery, Jim Crow racism, systemic discrimination, because those things are still with us today. And if education is going to help solve those things, you got to get it at the curricular level. So that's my presentation to you, because after doing just a read of what you've accomplished over the last 10 years or so, it became clear to me that you started off here, but you evolved to, and I like the word Evolve 502 because it truly represents what you're trying to do. It's you've evolved from stating this, no disrespect, simplistic numerical goals to understanding what a good community is. And so I applaud you. I applaud your good work. And I'm looking forward to any question. I know we're at time, but let me know if you have any questions or if you want to exchange in any brief way.
Yeah, Dr. Perry, what we'd love to do is, since you have been here and we look forward to having you back again, is to have people put questions in the chat. Just because of time, we would love to potentially invite you back to really address some of those questions. I think I speak for many of the people here in saying I hate everything that you said, and am so grateful for the eloquence and clarity with which you have said them. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate having you and your insight here. So at this moment, you referenced Evolve 502 several times, and Marlon Cole is not able to be here with us today because of a death in the family, but we'd love to. She did record something for us. So John, if you don't mind throwing that up, that'd be great.
Good morning. It's great to be with you today. While education has been and is meant to be a source of opportunity, it has been a perpetuator of inequality for many. And this is why the work of Evolve 502 is so critically important. The added impact of COVID-19 this year and the outcries for social justice in our community have greatly magnified the challenges facing our youth and families. And Evolve 502, with its partners, is uniquely positioned to play a role in the recovery and the healing that our community needs and so desperately deserves. As a public-private partnership, Evolve 502 is focused on growing the educational attainment of our community. It is our vision that every child will be prepared for college, career, and a successful life. And it is our mission to help remove and mitigate the barriers to academic success that are caused by poverty and racism. We use 3 strategies to drive our work: systems, scholarships, and supports. In all that we do, we strive to make systems change using data, best practices, and the reallocation of resources in our community so that we can identify and address the gaps along the pathway to academic success. We are raising the dollars to provide free college, a 2-year tuition-free post-secondary education, and other supports beginning with the class of 2021 for JCPS students. And we are convening and collaborating with JCPS and other community partners to better link youth and families to needed resources and services so that we ensure that every child has the tools they need to be successful. As a convener and broker for supports for out-of-school time providers, churches, and other organizations that are doing the critical work to stand up community learning hubs, we are ensuring that young people remain engaged, that they have academic supports, enrichment opportunities, and the opportunity for socialization, which is so critically important during this time of non-traditional instruction. A young man attending a community learning hub at the Boys and Girls Club shared that he was on the verge of dropping out of school. He was struggling with online instruction and had no one at home to help him. I was overwhelmed to hear him express his new sense of purpose and hope for his future because of the help and support that he is gaining at the Community Learning Hub. We launched our scholarship application just a month ago, and over 450 students have applied so far. We're hearing from students that they now can see a way forward to achieve their dreams and a path towards that career that seemed out of reach prior to. So we are doing so much more than providing a scholarship. We are really providing hope and promise for a generation of students who have been left out and left behind because of an education system that just doesn't work for all of us. We are changing those critical conversations that take place in the homes of our youth. Young people are saying, I matter and I can learn. They're now saying, yes, college or some level of education past high school can be for me and should be for me. And that, yes, I too can be successful. And from the words of one of our Western high school students, and yes, I too want to make my mom and my dad proud. If we are truly going to be a world-class city, if we are going to recruit and retain business in this community, if we are going to do more than talk about equity, and if we're truly listening and understanding the cries for justice, we must do everything we can to disrupt the systems that perpetuate this inequality and make the necessary investments in our people through education. Evolve 502 is honored and takes its role very seriously to continue this important work that has been started in our community many years ago, led by 55,000 Degrees and many others. We understand the importance of making the necessary investments in our human infrastructure, and that this is critically necessary to move us forward. We look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Thank you so much.
All right. Wow. Lots that we've learned over the last, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes here. And just like to see raise of hands. How many of you heard something inspiring, surprising, maybe even shocking from one of the speakers? We heard from a lot of different folks there. Dana and Aldwin and Laura and Matt, Sarah, Jim, Alicia, Marlon, and Andre. Thank you all for being such powerful contributors to this event. And what I'd love to do now is for everybody to get your typing fingers ready. Everybody get your typing fingers up. And I want you just to reflect. I'm going to throw some music on. In the chat box, I'd love for you to just type in any big ahas, learnings, takeaways, something that surprised you, something that inspired you. Go ahead and flood the chat with some learnings or even some appreciations for those who contributed so powerfully to our event today. Thank you all who contributed. Would love to see in the chat box your biggest learnings, takeaways so far as we move into the final stretch of our time together today. Oh, thank you, Adria, for being the first in. Wealth predicts for education, not the other way around. We must consistently remind ourselves of that. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate all the contributors. Points that Dr. Perry made must be made public. Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Beautiful. Being inspired by Evolve 502's commitment to making higher education a possibility for students who might not otherwise think it's possible. Quote by Dr. Perry, there's nothing wrong with Black people that solving racism can't solve. Beautiful. Biggest takeaway for me was community driven and using data towards those ends. Yeah, I loved that too. Thank you. Multi-area reinforcement, investing in Black and brown kids does not harm white kids. Jim's comments, connect education to the real problem and focus on the students in need. Wow, these are great, everybody. Thank you. Kids don't live in schools, they live in communities. That's powerful. City education ecosystem is deeply entwined with housing and structural racism embedded in the conversation. Wonderful to think of the system more broadly than sometimes these conversations go. Yeah, thank you for that. Wow, lots and lots and lots of learnings, too many for me to take the time to read. So thank you all very much for that and for being a part of these last 45 minutes or so where we've gotten lots and lots of wisdom shared here. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Gwen at this point.
Oh, better unmute. Thanks, Adair, and everybody. Boy, this has been so inspiring. And, you know, we've always had at our board meetings and other times a moment to hear directly from a student. And so we couldn't let this time go without doing that again. I want to introduce you to Sarah Reese, who was raised in Louisville, but is now in the DC area as a senior strategist at the National LGBTQ Task Force, where they've had an 18-year career in the trenches of progressive candidate and issue campaigns, organizing across the country. This is a story, though, that is when things sort of worked in terms of education. Sarah's college education at U of L was interrupted early in their career, but when a reason rose up to finish their degree, Louisville was there to help. So I want you to hear a little bit from Sarah about this adult comebacker story that's both instructive and encouraging. So Sarah, welcome, and let's get started. What led you to stopping out of U of L and what brought you back?
Thank you so much. It's so awesome to be here, and it's been so inspiring to be with you all this morning, and grateful for your work over these years. I stopped out because I'm an experiential learner, and I was having a lot of fun working in political campaigns, helping women run and win office in Louisville and across the Commonwealth, as well as doing justice work with the Fairness Campaign and the Kentucky Fairness Alliance statewide. And my political science professors were irritated with me that I was not in class, and yet I was bringing in, A's and B's. And I left to go help run a campaign for a former state senator And during that time, failed to do all of the dot your I's and cross your T's of what it meant to withdraw properly. And so when I returned in the spring of '95, I had a very poor GPA and had not a lot of excitement about diving back in, and was in an internship at City Hall in the old city of Louisville, learning. I was in, the school of life, and so was having a lot more fun, frankly, not inside a classroom. And what brought me back 18 years later, almost 20 years later, was I was in a mid-career leadership program through the Rockwood Leadership Institute. And it's one of those programs where people change their life. They either stay at the organization they're with and excel and matriculate into another position, or their lives change. They get divorces, they change careers, they change jobs. And mine was twofold. I actually created a new job for myself at the task force, from the director of an organizing team to being the senior strategist. I wanted to be the garden tender, the internal org development manager. And I also discovered this thing called biomimicry, which is the study of nature to apply to human challenges. And when I learned more about biomimicry and what it would take to become an expert in it, it meant getting a master's degree. And because I hadn't finished my bachelor's degree, I had a hurdle to jump that I hadn't necessarily planned on jumping until there was a need to, and then there became a need to.
Great. Well, and so how was your experience trying to re-enroll?
It's such a good question. I am a community and electoral organizer. I have learned all kinds of skills about what it means to be successful. And there are barriers, right, in systems. I think all of us on this call know that. And because we have an amazing, you all talked about what were the successes that have come together to make this program a success. And I benefited from that. And part of it was the attitude of we want to get people back home to finish these degrees, come back home and do this. And so when I was looking for a program to finish my bachelor's, I looked at other online programs. I was, at work full time still and needing to get this degree. And I was sitting at my desk one day and I thought, why am I looking at these other programs? I wonder what U of L has. I have all these credits sitting there. And so why not go home and finish this degree? So I typed in, University of Louisville online, and up pops the organizational leadership and learning degree. And it was really serendipitous because the syllabus of the OLL program matched my new job description. And when I had a conversation, I actually think it was with Matt, and we talked, and it really was perfect, right? It was this praxis of everything I'd learned on the ground and on the job for 20 plus years in a program that then I could also apply it when I was learning. It also helps that there are people who really care about folks succeeding. So Jenny Sawyer at U of L, while I have a relationship with her, I know that she stays at her office until 9 o'clock at night calling prospective students to help, get rid of barriers for them returning. She had the unenvious position of calling me and saying, hey, got your folder on my desk, and good news, bad news. Your grades were so bad that you actually don't qualify to return to U of L. That's the bad news. The good news is you have to write a letter and tell us what you've been up to, and we can put you on probation and come back in. And that wasn't actually the most important thing that Jenny said. Jenny is egoless, and I think that all of you in this program have demonstrated the egolessness that is necessary when a system comes together to work. She also encouraged me to go back to take some of my core classes at JCTCS. They were going to be cheaper. It was the same quality of classes, and I could finish them in a timeline that would help me get into the OLL program faster. The other piece that was really helpful is that in the OLL program, as you all probably know, is this, and Matt put up on his slide, the prior learning assessment. That was invaluable. It gave me a sense of, I knew that the work I had done for the last 20 years was in some ways historic and on a national level in moving the LGBT social justice and political movement forward. And I was able to document every leadership experience that I had had. And just having that portfolio gave me a sense of accomplishment, and someone validated it, right? Like, we shouldn't need people to validate things, but we live in a system where sometimes we do. It's not enough to have personal validation. And so just going through the process of the prior learning experience application was hugely motivational.
Man, so what a great story of, having this opportunity set up. And we're seeing that so many more of our higher eds are doing that. But to take advantage of the way to take some courses at Jefferson, others at U of L. And all of that was online, right? So now we are in this pandemic Zoom age where we're worried about, gosh, with everything online, just give a quick minute. How was that for you?
Yeah, I was worried because I am an experiential learner. I was a fine student. My mom was a 20-year JCPS high school teacher. And so, I come from a family that values education. I got good enough grades to stay on the basketball team, the debate team. But I learn better when I'm, doing things with my hands and talking with people in real time. And so I was really nervous about the online experience. And because of my experience and my life experience as an adult for 20 years, I learned I know time management. I know how to be successful. And so I found it way easier and a lot more satisfying than I thought it would be. The challenge was a pro is the asynchronous aspect. You can do it at any time as long as you turn in your assignments on time, right? The challenge, though, is that you're not building the sort of human relationship with people. And so the dynamics of racism, classism, sexism, transphobia, et cetera, they are there in a different way. And so what I experienced is that when I would post things about being queer, about being trans, about being married to a woman, about my positions on race as an anti-racist white person, those posts would get less replies to them. And so, there is a way in which these biases play out online in a different way. And I think it's something we have the opportunity to improve upon in the online experience.
You also mentioned, and that's such an important call out for all who are educators and working in this online community, but you mentioned to me the importance of, there was like an advisor person in most of these situations too, right?
Yeah, so I actually have had a sort of an interesting, from the enrollment experience at U of L, having the conversation with Jenny, having the conversation with Matt, having a coach and a counselor through the OLL program, there was two pieces of advice. One was don't take math online. And so I didn't. I came home to U of L and took an in-person math class for a semester. I also took an in-person communications class at the District of Columbia Community College. And so those two experiences, proved invaluable, having listened to the counselors and the coaches and implemented their advice. Awesome experience at JCCCS. And then at Arizona State University, where I'm pursuing a master's degree, again, having someone who's checking in with online learners, both getting the emails that are, they're obnoxious because they're filling up your inbox, and someone's thinking about you, and you have a scheduled call every semester to talk about your plan.
Great. I want to keep talking with you forever, but we've got to go. Can you, in 10 seconds, say, if you're looking ahead 10 years from now and thinking back, and everything is, we've got great equity, people are embracing learning, what's happened? What's the one thing you would wish happens between now and then? And really, we got to keep it quick, but thank you, Sarah.
Gosh, that's such a big question, Mary Gwen. I think continuing to focus on getting folks back in. I've been an evangelist about, if you're in your 40s, go back to school. Even if you've gotten a degree, go back and do some kind of learning. Being able to sit down and reflect on the life experiences and doing that praxis, I think is invaluable. Supporting people to, even if it's not part of an entire degree, and you just made it a certificate program, the prior learning application, I think that would be invaluable. So continuing to remove the barriers and to increase the excitement and the motivation for folks. And y'all are doing that. That's what I've been hearing for 2 hours. So I'm so grateful to all of you for making this possible.
Thanks for sharing your story, Sarah. It was great to have you, and we want you back in Louisville. So I'm going to turn it back to Adair.
All right. Okay. How many of you raise your hand if you've learned something new, interesting, insightful, inspiring, and are ready to go out and perhaps even do something about something that you've heard? Awesome. Love seeing all those hands up. So what we're going to do now as a way to wrap up and
Okay, bye.
I think somebody broke through the mute barrier. Somebody on the team can help me out there. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to invite all of you to think back on the last couple of hours that we've had together. I don't know about you, but for me, the time has just absolutely flown by with all the great insight and wisdom that's been brought forth in this celebration for 55K degrees. So if everybody will just take a moment, grab your pen, wave it up in front of the camera, make sure you got your pen handy and ready to go. And I'm going to invite you to draw a very simple drawing. So find, again, a blank piece of paper, a Post-it note, scratch, whatever you got laying around, and just make yourself a really quick T-graph. And on the left side, I'd love for you to write any ahas. So that's just anything you've learned, any insights, any wisdom, anything that struck you or surprised you, any ahas. And then on the right side, I'd love for you to reflect on any actions that you are looking to take as a result of what was shared today. So I'm going to invite you to reflect, just like we did earlier, for a minute or so. I'll put the music up, and then put you into breakout rooms of 3 where you can all share here in just a moment. So would love to give you some space now to reflect. Started with the mayor this morning. Then you all had some really engaging stories that you shared in breakout rooms. We heard from key leaders from 15K. We heard from adult learner expert Matt Bergman and lots others before Andre came on. So anything that was an aha moment, anything that you learned over the last couple of hours? And then any actions that you're looking to take as a result of what you've learned. Maybe there's some actions that you feel like you can directly control or influence, and maybe some that you think need to be taken that you might not be able to directly influence. You can write those down too. What's still left on the table? Where does the focus need to be in terms of those actions? About another 30 seconds. And right now, as you're wrapping up, I just invite you to, for your sharing, if you have a list of ahas, everybody just circle one aha, and then over on your actions, same thing. Just circle one action that you're going to quickly share in a minute or less when we go into our breakout rooms here in just a second. So just take a moment, circle the one aha and the one action that you'd like to share in your breakout room. All right, so here's what we're going to do. In just a moment, you're going to move into your breakout rooms very much like we did last time. You got 3 more amazing people that you're going to get to connect with. If everybody will just share in their one aha and their one action, maybe a minute or 2 each, no more than 2 minutes, we're going to leave you in there for about 6 minutes. All right, we're going to leave you in there for a total of about 6 minutes together. So everybody jump in your breakout room, really quickly jump into your ahas and your actions, and then we'll bring you out in 6 minutes. We'll give you the time cues like we did last time. And John, I think we are ready with those breakout rooms. So whenever you are ready, if you would like to go ahead and give everybody that blue box, we'll see you back here about 12:26, everybody. Enjoy. If it's you, John, or Tate, if you guys will pop into, we have something called a Mentimeter. Has anybody ever done a Mentimeter? Give me a hand raise if you've done a Mentimeter before. If you've never done one, raise your hand. This is going to be a novel experience at the end of our event. Super cool. There's going to be a link coming in to the chat. If you will just jump into the Mentimeter, what we'd like to collect right now is a summary of all the actions that you are all going to be taking here in the next 90 days based on something that you heard or learned today. So if you will all jump over to the Mentimeter, you can just hit that link there. It will take you to a survey where it will invite you to put in the one action that you are planning to take as a result. All right. So what we're going to do now is you guys are putting your actions in. We'll share that before the end of the event today. Is I'm actually going to kick it over to Ben.
Thank you, Darren. And I'd just like to take a second to recognize the skill and energy that you brought to this. So if we could just give a virtual round of applause to our brilliant facilitator.
Thank you so much.
And then again, another shout out to HEI, who not only compiled the report, but also helped to organize this event. So thank you to Tate and team. And John, our fabulous tech backbone guru, who, though I will not call down the wrath of the tech gods upon us by saying anything about it at this late moment, let us note that some later point we will be giving thanks.
And Ben, I'm actually just going to pop up while you're talking, if you don't mind, what's coming up in the Mentimeter. Is that okay?
Sure. So what I would love to do with this final bit is spend a half an hour really singing the praises of Mary Gwen for all the work that she has done. She has expressly forbidden me from doing that. So that's not what we're going to do. But before we hand over to her, I would love for if we could take a few minutes in the chat to add some comments about her leadership that we can give to her later. So if you either want to put them in the chat or directly message me, I'll save those. Mary Gwen, I can only say from myself personally, though I know I speak on behalf of many people who have asked to give toasts and I have told them no. Thank you for anyone to have deliberately taken on not so much hurting kittens in the way that this has been hurting kittens, but hurting feral and well-armed tigers in an attempt to accomplish a nigh unto impossible goal that was essential to our community, and to have done it with the grace that you have exhibited, and the leadership is just so incredibly inspirational for many of us. So as we hand off this moment, thank you so much for the leadership that all that you have brought to our community and to so many of the people who are on this call. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Gwen Wheeler.
Thanks, Ben. And gosh, I am just so inspired. And what I really want to be doing is reading everybody's takeaways and the actions. But it's already at time and I need to close this out. I had a 5-minute speech. I don't know. But here's what I do want to say. Louisville's 55K chapter is closing. And it has been a true privilege and honor to support this partnership. And I'm so proud of what this community has done together. And that word community means so much more now with Dr. Perry's comments. You know, what we did, we set an ambitious collective goal and we held a belief that we could do it together. We demanded transparency of data. We took on responsibility for our part and we held each other mutually accountable. And that motivated us because we were asking each other to keep the student at the center. We built bridges at places where a handoff between those silos was needed. We identified what support students needed, and then we provided them. I'm so inspired by our post-secondary partners who have doggedly improved student retention, persistence, and completion, and used data to know when and where the students were falling off track, and then reached out with advisement or supports or emergency funding or even timely mini grants. I'm so inspired by the academies of Louisville and where Kentuckiana Works and GLI and JCPS are connecting with business partners and students and higher ed, Jefferson and U of L and others that are providing dual credit courses so that these pathways are more seamless and smoother. By the work being done to reskill and upskill current workers or those who are unemployed or underemployed, and this new important focus on disconnected youth or what we call opportunity youth. I'm so inspired by our Black and Latinx leaders activists and allies whose relentless insistence that students of color, poor students, whose barriers of poverty are often rooted in structural racism, be included in this promise of education. And I'm so inspired by JCPS's racial equity plan and implementation. And now our collective challenge is to insist on implementation of the many other racial equity plans that are being put in place and made in response to the calls for justice for our own Breonna Taylor, GLI's racial equity plan, U of L's commitment to anti-racism, others, the city's racial equity plan that the mayor mentioned. But I want to leave you with a few more challenges, and these are the same ones in some ways that Dr. Perry did, so I'm feeling so validated. Let's continue that collective, regular, and transparent community level review of our education data. Who's getting that quality education and who's not? It's the way to stay focused and to be motivated by our aligned action. I'm pleased to say that the Greater Louisville Project will be taking on the task to update and publish the education data dashboard. Make sure they know what else needs to be researched. Evolve 502 is identifying those pinch points where students are falling off the path. Make sure that they report on progress to the community. I saw Dr. Kish Kumi-Price, I'm not sure if she's still on at U of L. She's dug into this education data and is a true resource now for our community on student outcomes. Be sure to follow Urban League's education advocacy. Metro United Way is leading our capacity to refer and track social services and supports throughout our community through their United Community platform. How will we make this data sharing tool the platform for a community-wide safety net? Second challenge, data first. Second challenge, we must recognize that we depend on people wanting and embracing learning opportunities. So we've got to collectively figure out how to share the onus of financial aid and navigational burdens to get credentials and degrees, particularly for adults. Leaving it to the individual risks losing untapped talent. Third, we must invest. And we've talked about that, and Dr. Perry talked about that, Marlon talked about that. If we think education is foundational, we've got to put more resources there. Invest in 2 years of tuition-free college for an entire generation of public school grads. Let's demand that the legislature bring Kentucky's funding of higher ed back up and to the national average as a target. Let's help employers and post-secondaries create more short-term stackable credentials so people can move in more quickly and start to rise up on that education and career pathway. And let's ensure that JCPS, with their increased taxes, fully implements its future state vision, investing in student learning and support, and changing policies for more equitable access to quality teaching. So thank you for letting me stay on my soapbox to close us out here. But inclusion means having high expectations for everyone and for ourselves. It's easy with the twin pandemics. I shouldn't say it's easy. The twin pandemics of COVID-19 and our racial and social inequities have stretched us, and we are tired. So it's hard to see how we'll catch up. But I'm filled with hope that the next wave of leaders, student activists, protesters, activists, all of us, I'm so inspired that we'll embrace the future and meet these challenges. I really thank you for participating today and creating this community that we'll take forward. We are what we need. We are the answer. Let's get to work. Thanks to all.